I call Brendan Burns.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to start by expressing some disappointment in the Minister and the Chair, because Peter Dunn has made it his hallmark to represent the middle classes of New Zealand. That has been his rallying cry, and his political rhetoric has been built around assisting middle-income New Zealanders to get ahead. And this budget is doing nothing, in my view, to assist middle-income New Zealanders to get ahead. And I think that he's bought into the rhetoric that was very much in prominence back in 2008, and basically the deal was from the National Party in 2008 to the New Zealand electorate: you can have your cake and eat it as well. You can have everything that the Labor government had provided to you. You can have working for families, you can have KiwiSaver, but you will get tax cuts as well, as picked up by Part 1 of this bill, which enshrines the tax cuts that have been put in place by this government. And here's the reality, as we see in this bill, that in fact those tax cuts, as enshrined by Part 1 of this bill, are actually only part of the equation, because they are being eroded. They are being eroded by all the other measures that are included in this bill, and other government measures we've seen in the recent past, such as the cuts in early childhood education and the fees resulting, increases in ACC levies and the like. I'd like to also note this, that set of tax cuts, as implemented by Part 1 of this bill, was affirmed as feasible, as realistic by the National Party in opposition in 2008, as the world financial markets were falling apart. Those tax cuts, as enshrined by Part 1 of this bill, were told, New Zealanders were told they were affordable after Goldman Sachs had collapsed and the US economy was in turmoil, after Merrill Lynch had collapsed and had to be bailed out by the taxpayer of America by the tune of $3 billion. So where do we end up? We've got in Part 1 of this bill the tax rates that are going to apply through the part of this year as set out by this piece of legislation. And what is it trying to deal with? It's trying to deal with a deficit of $16.7 billion. $16.7 billion. That's what the tax revenue is attempting to address. And as my colleague David Shearer pointed out, when this government came into office, $5 billion in surplus, a turnaround of more than $20 billion. We've now got 16 billion tonnes of debt upon our backs, and this part of the bill is attempting to have the tax revenues offset some of that. And I wanted to ask this of the Minister and the Chair. How secure are the revenue predictions that underlie Part 1 of this bill and the tax rates that will apply in the financial year ahead? And I ask that because already we're hearing through media today how employers are saying the other measures in this bill in respect of KiwiSaver are going to have to be met by them cutting back on the tax they pay by putting it on to their employees. And we heard Alistair Thompson of the Northern Employers Organisation saying that this will be coming out, the KiwiSaver components in Part 2 of this bill will be coming out of the wage increases of employees. Now, therefore, how are we going to put any store by the tax projected revenues incorporated in Part 1 of this bill, when the employers are saying that they are going to be saying to their employees, we're not going to meet the KiwiSaver ramifications that the Part 2 of this bill includes. We're going to be looking to you, our employees, to meet those costs. And I ask the Minister, what revenue implications is that going to have? What revenue implications is that going to have for Part 1 of this bill? I'd like to also point out the difference between IRD's projections and the Treasury's projections as outlined in the Budget Economic and Fiscal Update. A difference around the order of $3.5 billion over the next 4 years, nearly $1 billion a year, and that is a huge component as we know, in respect of Part 1 of this bill.